Welcome to Finding the Beat. I'm Larry Moskowitz, and today we're talking to Valerie Bowden, founder and CEO of CRDLE. Valerie's journey took her from living in Ethiopia to building a company that connects U.S. businesses with incredible remote talent across Africa. Her story is about purpose, perspective, and creating opportunity where others might not see it. Let's jump right in.
Now I'm actually, doing business. So people always ask me how I went from social work to business, because you don't often make that leap. But for my friends who are still doing social work, I have so much respect because it's hard work, but important work.
Well, I think we're in the next hour. I think we're going to get into, I think your business involves social work, right?
hmm I think I use a lot of the values and the ethics that I learned in social work.
Okay, so we jumped quite a bit ahead, but I think we're going to get to Africa at some point, right? So,
Definitely.
so you get a degree in social work
I
from
got my I
university?
got my degree, and then I worked for a year as like an HR human resource specialist. And then, I had been to Ethiopia one time after college for just a couple months. And the whole time while I'm in Miami and working this HR job, I'm like, wow, I can't get Ethiopia out of my head. Like something about that country was so special that I thought like I should go back to Ethiopia. But what are other African countries like? Because you're right, like we never hear them in the news. So you really have no idea until you're like physically there and get an understanding. And then because I was so broke from grad school, I could only go like backpacking with a tent. Like that was all I could afford. So I bought a one-way ticket to Cape Town and I just started backpacking across the continent.
Okay, let's back up a second. So,
Mhm.
I mean, how does Ethiopia wind up on your radar to begin with?
Well, as a social work student, you have to do a lot of volunteering. It's like part of your classwork to have so many volunteer hours. And so after I graduated, I heard about a volunteer position in Ethiopia for 3 months. And I was like, done. Like I'm used to volunteering. I've never done it like internationally at that kind of level. But I went for it. And it was one of those situations where I got to Ethiopia and I realized that nobody needs me to volunteer, and this nonprofit was actually kind of operating illegally, and it was a very bad situation. But what I did realize is Ethiopia is really cool. It's so much different than I had thought Africa would be. Amazing coffee, amazing food, beautiful hospitality, and I just kind of fell in love with Ethiopia from then on.
Okay, so, I would think that most Americans, Ethiopia is a mystery. Okay,
hmm
what you see on TV is starving people.
hmm
Okay, you see South Africa, right? You see a metropolitan. I
hmm
mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know what you believe about Africa is only what you have seen in American press, right? I mean,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
What I've seen in my own experiences about Europe, about the Mid East. Uh, I will just tell you from my experiences of going to Israel, was a 180 from what I
Mm-hmm.
believed Israel was until when I went there. And Africa, I think would be no different. For what I have seen on American press, I believe would be completely different than what I would experience. Did
Yeah.
that hold true for you?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think on the news, we either hear only the bad things, and we don't hear the good things, or we hear things that are honestly totally incorrect. So yeah, being there, it was like the same feeling where I was literally so naive. I thought I would see lions walking around, and instead you see massive buildings, there's tech hubs, there's just so many like amazing like technologies and innovations and things happening, and also so much safer than you would have realized. I mean, I would hitchhike across town, and I hitchhiked all throughout my backpacking trip and never had an issue. And I wouldn't even do that in the US. So yeah, it's completely different when you're on the ground and you see what it's actually like.
So before you went there, did you do any research?
No, definitely not as much as I should have. I heard I knew one other friend who had volunteered in Ethiopia, and I thought like it's gonna be fine. Like if she did it, I'm doing it too.
And did you go by yourself?
I did. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
and what did the parents think? I mean, how old were you? You were in your early 20s, mid 20s?
Yeah, I was about 22 at the time. No, my parents, definitely my mom was not on board. She was very worried. My dad was a lot more he saw what I wanted to do and he was a lot more supportive, but I'm sure like as any parent, like he had his own concerns, but my mom was definitely the one who was most anxious. And right around this time was when all of those Taken movies were coming out. And so all of my friends thought I would be like kidnapped and end up on the news. And truly most people weren't super supportive of my trip.
Okay, and I'm going to take a guess. Not much internet, right? We didn't have Google, right? We didn't
Mm,
really have an idea of how we could find stuff.
yes. Yeah. I mean, this is like back in the day, like even before, I think before WhatsApp and like before Google Maps, like it was like I used Skype to communicate when I could. I didn't know my way around. Now, obviously, I was just back in Ethiopia in August, and it's totally different, especially after COVID. You know, there's so many new technologies that have come out, but back then, yeah, there wasn't a lot.
Okay, so you go there for 3 months
Hmm.
and changes your world, changes your perspective on life.
Hmm. Yes, to both. Changed my perspective, showed me that Africa is different than I realized, showed me that I didn't need to volunteer and some of the dark side of the charity nonprofit world that I wasn't really aware of.
Such
And
as,
that so many of the nonprofits are either operating illegally or they're not doing the good that they say that they're doing, and in many cases, even causing significant harm. And there's some amazing ones out there, but I
now
think most.
what do you mean like significant harm?
Oh, for example, there was a nonprofit in Ethiopia who wanted to help kids on the street. And so what they would do is they would give like a cow to the family of the kid they found on the street, so that the family would have income. You know, they could start milking the cow, they could sell the milk, and that way it would prevent kids from getting on the street. So it sounds good, but what happened was people were so desperate and in such poor circumstances that they started purposely giving their kids up to the streets, hoping that the nonprofit would find them and then they would get a cow and their kid back. But then along the way, these kids got lost, trafficked, abused, hooked on drugs, never saw their families again. And
Wow.
so, again, it was like, it sounds good in theory, but in practice, it actually caused so many children to lose their lives or lose their family at least. And so, yeah, I saw just so many examples of that.
So, someone that wants to get involved in charities, my feeling, and again, my own opinion, is, and especially in our law firm, we're doing 3 or 4 different things this year, and we always take the perspective we don't want to just give money,
Mm.
because we don't know what's going to happen with that money. We don't
Mhm.
know if 90% of it is going to administrative things and it doesn't really
Right.
reach the intended use of
Mhm.
that money.
I
So
agree. I saw that a lot too, where like the missionaries or the people who are running it were living fabulous lives, like way above standards of what you would even see in the US. But then the money was not actually reaching the community that they said that they were helping. So yeah, I think that's smart that you're not just doing that you're aware.
So in Ethiopia, and again, just from the perspective that I see, Ethiopia, the comedians,
Hmm.
if you're starving, stay out of the desert, one famous comedian who's no longer with us. But now that I'm talking to Valerie, there's commerce in Ethiopia. There's
Hmm.
business in Ethiopia. There's technology in Ethiopia. I can honestly say that I've never heard of any of that in Ethiopia.
Mm,
I've never seen
yeah,
that on American television in Ethiopia.
right. And the thing is, you probably won't because what the media coverage is really, it either comes from nonprofits or charities who really benefit from the idea of Africa being poor and needing help and famines, right? Because that makes you donate, so they don't want to share the full truth. Or even like news stations. Like if you said like, wow, it's growing and it's amazing and everything is going kind of well, like that's not going to sell papers, but some one-off situation that's taken out of proportion, like that will sell stories. So there's just not a lot of, unfortunately, good media exposure out there. But yeah, if you're actually there, it's like, especially Ethiopia, it's such like a delightful country with so many like I mean millions of like talented professionals, great businesses, amazing investment opportunities. It's just such a wonderful place to be.
So, what other countries did you go to while you were in Africa that have the same kind of perspective where Americans might not perceive those particular countries as being thriving African
Mhm.
countries such as Ethiopia?
I would say all of them. I mean, I think it's almost like the whole continent is very misconstrued. And so on my backpacking trip, I started in South Africa and decided I'm going to backpack until I got to the very end of the continent, which is Egypt. And so I did South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. And I would say out of those 13 countries that I saw, all of them have so much business, so much investment, super friendly, super safe. I mean, it's like America has the wrong concept of the entire continent. And every country is so different. But one thing that they share is that we don't know the truth about them.
Why do you think that is? Well,
Again, yeah, I think first of all, like we haven't there's not as much tourism there for whatever reason, and so there's not as many people who have been there and can take pictures and show that it's different. And then again, I think people just are benefiting off of the negative story. But I do hope, and I think that will change hopefully in the future, just because like they call Africa like the last frontier, and so I think there is just more and more countries doing business and investment on the continent, and I think it's going to really bloom. And yeah.
so how did your adventures turn into the Valerie Bowden business?
Mm. Well, as I was backpacking, I was still curious, like, okay, what's working in Africa? Because I had that social work brain and I was wondering, like, okay, I saw the bad side in Ethiopia, but like maybe that was just Ethiopia. And so as I'm backpacking, I'm first of all having tons of fun and doing all the touristy fun things to do. But along the way, I would stop at a school or a tech hub or a charity or a nonprofit. And I was trying to figure out like what is working. And it was just overwhelming that anything that was creating good, sustainable jobs was how communities were getting out of poverty. And by the time I finished my trip, I got actually a job offer in Ethiopia. And so I finished my trip and I thought, okay, I'll just go back to Ethiopia for 6 more months and then I'll finally come home. I ended up staying 8 years because I just loved Ethiopia. But I realized that I wanted nothing to do with the nonprofit charity world anymore. Because again, there are some great ones, but I had just seen so many bad ones that I didn't even want to be affiliated with that industry anymore. And so that's kind of how I started switching to business because I thought business can create jobs and it's ethical and it's sustainable. And that's kind of when I, yeah, transitioned my career.
Wow,
Hmm.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. So you stayed 8 years.
I know. I mean, to be honest, about 2 years in, I met a boy, I think, which is how all stories start. And that's how I met my husband, is that I had been there for a couple years. Then we dated for a couple years. We got married. I had my first son there.
Congrats.
And so that was another reason why I stayed, was because his family was amazing. And, we had built our life out there until about COVID. And then it just made sense to come home for a little bit, especially once we were having kids. But yeah, I stayed, yeah, 8 years in Ethiopia and I loved it. And one day I was hitchhiking, of course, and I got in the car with somebody and he worked for an outsourcing company. And he said like, "Hey, they're hiring someone and I needed a job." So I went and they hired me on the spot. And that was my first time knowing that there are outsourcing companies in Ethiopia. I had no idea that like large Fortune 500 companies are building offshore call centers and teams in Africa.
So I saw something where the AI companies are now
Mm.
using a lot of Africans to teach AI,
Mm, mhm.
how to recognize speech and other types of AI tools.
Mm,
I saw a piece a while back where there's just rooms and rooms and warehouses of Africans uh, teaching AI and learning AI, um, teaching AI how to
mm.
recognize English.
I have not heard that, but I believe that because there's so many international companies now building teams on the continent, and you also have like a massive amount, like millions and millions of college educated professionals who speak English, and then they're young and they're just naturally tech savvy, so they are like the perfect ones to be implementing AI and working on it.
You know what I find interesting is like at least once, if not more, a day, we get solicited by offshore attorneys,
Mm,
companies like yours, I believe,
hmm
are looking for us to hire offshore attorneys, just like the attorney that we have working for
hmm
us now, who is a licensed attorney in Ecuador, who's in our office today, working for us. She's not licensed in America, but she is
hmm
a lawyer, and she's here from Ecuador.
hmm
Um, but we've never had anyone that is African.
I know so many.
Maybe that's an opportunity for your business. Uh,
Yeah, I think so because unfortunately there's just not enough jobs available locally. So what happens is like we do get lawyers who apply just to be like a virtual assistant. We get doctors who apply to be a virtual
yeah.
assistant. Like there's just you get like the smartest, most educated professionals of all fields, including legal. Really excited about working with international companies.
So why don't you explain what your company does? Well, before we
Mhm.
get there, why don't you explain how you got in? I thought you were starting to. I
Mhm.
apologize for cutting you off. Why don't you explain? So you were hitchhiking.
Mhm.
That would be a real no-no in America, I
I
guess.
know.
I guess in Africa that's not a big deal, right?
Like the according to the Global Peace Index, the majority of African countries rank more peaceful than the United States. And so like that's why I would do hitchhiking in most African countries and feel quite comfortable. Um, but not in the US. But no, so yeah, I got a job at like just like a random outsourcing company in Ethiopia. And that was when I was like, wow, like I knew people were outsourcing to the Philippines or to India or Latin America, but I didn't know that was happening in Africa. And so I worked there for a few years and I loved the whole concept of outsourcing. Like overnight you might get a request for 30 call center reps, right? And that's 30 new jobs created for the youth. Like to me, it was like a win-win, and the American clients were so happy. I fell in love with the outsourcing industry. But after doing it for a few years, there was a few things that I noticed weren't quite right. Like the Ethiopians who were actually doing the work weren't getting paid very much, like maybe 50 cents an hour, because there were so many middlemen involved. And so the people actually doing the work weren't getting paid the money. And I just saw that so many global companies, they didn't want to recognize that they had teams in Africa. They didn't want to post about it on social media because again, you're right, like the stereotypes about the continent prevent people from wanting to really share that they're working there and having great success. And so there was just a few things that I just thought like this isn't quite right. And so my husband and I moved back to the US and I was 8 months pregnant with my second child and I decided to quit my job and start my own company. So horrible timing. Like timing never lines up when you're doing business. You have to take some risk. But I founded our company called Cradle, and it's an outsourcing company where we only hire in Africa. It's part of our social impact. Um, about 70% of who we hire is women, which I love. And we have over 130, 140 team members now. And we plug them into US companies doing all kinds of different roles, virtual assistants, sales, customer support. And it's just been the coolest win-win to work with so many amazing companies in the US and also be creating great jobs.
Are you at liberty to say what type of companies or what particular companies they work for, or uh,
Yeah. No, we have some great ones. As I mentioned, like we work with a few ex-NFL players, which we love. We work with Harvard professors. We work with some public figures, top tech companies in Silicon Valley, franchises, and even just like small and medium businesses. It's really anybody who's thought like, wow, we really need to, fill our pipeline and we need more affordable sales reps or we need some affordable admin support. Those are the companies we plug into.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
And does your husband work with you? Are you guys a partnership?
He is coming on board now, actually. So he's been like the silent supporter and cheerleader in the background. But we found such a huge need for companies in the US who wanted developers, and he is a developer. And so, yeah, he's kind of slowly coming on board, and we're launching that as a vertical to kind of get more into the tech space and serve our clients further. So that's been like a new chapter and super fun to have him working with us.
Fantastic. And you have one child?
We now have two. Yep. So one was born in Ethiopia, one was born here in Pittsburgh.
Oh, so you're out of Pittsburgh or?
Yeah. So my husband's job actually transferred him here to Pittsburgh. And I was hoping I would end up back in Florida, like somewhere warm, like not in the snowy weather, but we ended up here. And so it's growing on me, but I do miss the warm weather.
Fantastic. So you have any questions for me?
No. I'm just like so excited to meet you and have this opportunity.
So let me ask you. So I was at a dinner party and we had like one of those Secret Santa
Mhm.
exchange gifts, and I got this brick here with these cards, and I was like, oh, really? You must have got this from Marshalls or one of these layaways. And I was
Mhm.
like, a little disappointed. But actually, it turned out to be a blessing because what I do with all my guests is I randomly pick these cards,
I
and
love it.
and then I just ask the question. It has questions on it. So
So fun.
yeah, it is fun because we get the greatest answers.
Hmm.
But I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I don't know what the
Okay.
question is. What's the craziest thing you've done today?
Oh, the craziest thing I've done today, man. I mean, honestly, this is not work related at all, but we are deep into like the elf on the shelf phase with our kids. And so, um, I painted their noses red when they were sleeping this morning, and they woke up to a sign that said Rudolph made me do it from the elf. And they're 3 and 5 now, so they thought that was hilarious. And I'm like creeping in army style, trying not to wake them up. So that was probably the craziest thing. And then they both loved it and went to school with like red marker on their noses. So,
Oh, that's a great time in their lives. I remember my child who's in Alpha. She did not believe the tooth fairy, so she literally stayed
mm,
up and pretended she was sleeping
mm,
to catch us, but we pulled it over on her. So,
smart kid. I love
oh
that.
my, oh, you're not kidding. And she checked the handwriting on the little note we left. I
Oh,
mean, she went overboard on this, but we have yet to admit that we wrote the note. Anyway,
hilarious.
have you ever read a book that has changed your life?
Yes, definitely. I remember when I was in Kenya and I was just walking, and there was a person selling books, and it was like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And that was the book that really got me into reading again because after college, I was so down with like reading and studying, and I'm traveling and I'm having fun. And that was the book that got me back into reading business books and personal development books. And everything about that book made me want to live my life with a lot more intention.
And are you reading a book now?
I am reading a book about anxiety, actually, for business leaders. It's by Martha Beck. I think it's called Beyond Anxiety. And that was one of those things that I've realized like a founder who's become kind of a CEO of what's a big company, working with some big names, like that does not come without a little bit of stress, as much as I would like not like to admit that. But so it's just learning how to have such a growing company and not be stressed out.
It takes a lot, but you seem to be keeping it all together.
Well, I think one reason why it has been successful is I follow my own model. So all of my like internal team members who are helping me do this, they're all in Africa. And I always like to say like I am my own model that outsourcing works because I have 7 team members in Ethiopia and Zimbabwe, and they've helped me create like over 140 jobs and work with these big companies. And so that's how I know that outsourcing to Africa works is because in 3 years we've gone from bootstrapping to 7-figure income And it keeps growing, and my whole team gets the credit. So yeah,
Congratulations. Fantastic.
yeah, thanks.
You've
Yeah, we like to
done it
set
with
an example.
perspective, purpose, and creating opportunity.
Yeah, it's cool to create so many great jobs in Africa for like just like the coolest young people you'll ever meet. Like they're just so much fun. But also for our companies in the US, you hear a small business owner being like, "This has changed our business. Like we've made $100,000 in 6 weeks from your three reps." Or a team who has like a really cool SDR manager now has 20 of our SDRs who are just like doing such a great job. And so yeah, we're just really grateful that we get to see so many cool success stories.
For people that are going to be watching that, what is SDR?
Sales development representative. So
There
it's
you go.
basically like a cold caller or anybody who can kind of do sales inbound or outbound.
Perfect. And last one, would you rather have a life coach or a therapist?
Oh, therapist. Yeah. I mean, coming from the social work world, like I'm all like team therapy. Like everybody should have a therapist. That's yeah. Everybody should have a therapist. That's what I think.
Well, I hope your husband is successful in joining you so that you can move down to South Florida and we get to meet each
Yeah.
other in person. That would be a wonderful day. And even if you decide to come down for a vacation, let's get together and grab some coffee.
I would love that. I'm down for a Florida trip anytime. So get ready. Like
Well,
we're
this is the
coming.
time of year. We've got the boat in the backyard, and I can take you and your husband out, and we can have some fun.
So amazing. Thank you for that.
Wonderful, wonderful interview. Love the conversation. Keep up the good work, and let's add some law paralegals or some lawyers to your resume, and hopefully, maybe we can get someone in our law firm.
Would love that. Thanks,
So
Larry.
would we.
Amazing.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
That was Valerie from Cradle, proving that business can make an impact when it's built with purpose. Check out cradle.com to learn more, and if you enjoyed this episode, share it and hit subscribe. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep finding your beat.